All right, everyone. If we can welcome Joe Garone. He's going to be talking to us about one of our favorite companies, FinFisher, and a breakdown of their malware.
Yeah. Screw it. All right. So who hasn't here heard of FinFisher or Gamma International? Raise of hands. All right. FinFisher. All right. First off, what the hell is FinFisher, or the hell is FinFisher? FinFisher is a suite of tools by a company called Gamma International. Well, in this particular case, they're Gamma Group. They keep changing their name, so it's hard to really pinpoint exactly who they are next week. But right now, they're calling themselves Gamma International. But I grabbed that picture out of one of their brochures. So FinFisher is produced by a company called Gamma International, and what they do is they offer spy services to the highest bidder, typically to government organizations, intelligence agencies, police, whoever, the highest bidder. They really have no shame, no scruples, none of that. So, according to their brochure, what we're actually looking at today is a part of FinFisher called FinSpy, but the FinFisher utility suite actually contains several things. It contains a server module, a proxy module, something called FinFly, which is some kind of USB device, and FinSpy, which is the actual Windows exe Rewt Kit thing. So, according to the brochure, this is what supposedly this particular tool supports: chat logging, local password theft, microphone recording. Is anyone running FinFisher? Probably not, but they're probably going to be listening in on this. Key logging, remote access, password sniffing, geolocation, all the good stuff. Kind of like Sub 7. Anyone remember Sub 7 back in the day? Except with Skype. I don't think was there Skype during Sub 7? Probably not. So what we're looking at right here is a screenshot of the FinFisher master server. The master server comes with a couple of different utilities. A utility for packing files, like in a traditional packer or crypter or joiner, you have your payload file, like your master Trojan file, and you have your, say for example, a JPEG or a movie or a PDF. So you combine the two documents together, and so that way when someone double clicks on it and it has the right icon, something still happens, so they think they're getting treated with something. So in the case of, I'm just going to go back a couple slides, in this particular slide, this particular piece right here, that's the picture that pops up, a picture of President of Iran. I really suck with Arab names, so I'm not even going to try and say his name. It's Mohammed something. Thank you. Ahmadinejad. Ahmadinejad. All right. So what happens is when you launch this particular piece of malware, this picture pops up. Just to let you know that something did in fact happen. But I'll get to that in just a sec. So, like I said, this is what the master server looks like. The leak came from WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks is really awesome, They drop all that good stuff, all that good information. And in the leak came the master server, the proxy, and a few other things. The FinFisher people claim that they also support capabilities for Android, OS X, and Linux, but they only dropped the Windows portion. So we're all hoping and praying the wiki dropper people will be nice enough to provide us with something for Mac or Linux or whatever. Master server part 2. The server is installed, I already talked about that. The FinFisher proxy. This is the second part. The FinFisher, since it's not just super duper simple, the idea behind the FinFisher suite is you drop these little server modules, or these proxy modules in different locations throughout the country or throughout the world or whatever, and they route all stolen data through these, which eventually report home to the master server. The default, I know it's really hard to read, but if you go on my website, I will have slides, and I'll get to that at the last slide. But the default data is sent from the little client off to the proxy on various ports, which are typically open: port 22, 25, 53, 80, 443, and the one that stands out is 44 or 4111. The master server communicates over port 9991 or 9118 to the master server, but really now, you're not going to know that. All right, how does it infect? Like I already said, or maybe I didn't say it yet, the way it infects is email. So I bring up email because originally the FinFisher, the way we found out about it was several political journalists back in 2012 received some suspicious looking emails that claimed to have pictures on them about the president of Iran. And when they ran it, they got that picture that you saw on the front. So some company somewhere was sending these to these political dissidents. So email is the number one it's the number one infection vector. But the other infection vector could also be USB sticks. Back to what I was saying with that FinFly. Here's a little picture. It's really dumbed down, just so anyone can use it. The brochure also includes a really handy how-to guide, how to insert, how to click checkboxes, how to press go. Oh crap, what'd I do? I know, I need to activate my Windows, but I don't like Windows. How does it communicate? So, the way the actual malware component communicates back to its proxy servers is through encrypted SSL. So, by default, you're really not going to be able to see it unless you have some sort of SSL offloading, or if you actually have the key. But for the most part, it's pretty hard to actually see what kind of data is going back and forth, but we will get into actual decryption. What happens after launch? So here is a picture of root repeal running on 32-bit Windows XP. Root repeal is pretty good. GMR, just about any other just about any Rewt Kit revealing software will be able to show you what's going on, since it does hook the system service descriptor table, but I'll get to that in just a sec. Details. Hold on one sec. Details. All right. So how does it actually work? What makes FinSpy so awesome and not like the others? So recently, when I scanned the actual FinSpy executable on VirusTotal, it only had 3 hits. That's pretty good, right? 3 hits out of 60. What are they up to now on VirusTotal? 60. The reason why is either they paid off the right people, or they're using some really nice tricks. In my case, I kept running into some really cool tricks I don't normally see in malware. So in this case, process hollowing. Does anyone here work with malware or familiar with the process of process hollowing? No one? All right, so in process hollowing, what you're essentially doing is you're hollowing out a piece of memory and writing your code to it. More details. All right, so in the case of FinFisher, one thing I observed in the actual malware is it was actually storing each piece of code inside of the resources section under the dialogues. So here's a little screenshot of a program called CFF Explorer. If anyone was at my actual talk on reverse engineering malware on Friday, I went over this, but I guess there's not that many people that actually went to that, but that's cool. Encryption, decryption, oh my. So FinFisher encrypts its modules. That's one thing I observed throughout going through the actual FinFisher thing. I wanted to go into more detail, like with IDA and all this other stuff, but I realized 20 minutes is not enough time to go assembly line, so I'm trying to rush through this. So the encryption, decryption modules. One thing I observed in one of the in FinFisher's actual encryption decryption system was a 4-byte Xor key. So what I have here is on the bottom image is a picture of the decrypted portion of the dialogue from the resources section, and on the top is a little decryption module written up in Python, which goes through and Xor decrypts. I don't even know why I call it decryption, because Xor isn't technically decryption. I mean, it is, but it isn't. It's like you're an idiot if you use it. Same Xor key. So this exact same Xor key I actually found when I Googled this Xor key, because it's only 4 bytes long, 0x557. I'm tying up my words here. When you Google search the same Xor key, I actually came up with another individual who actually originally did his write-up on the FinFisher malware. In his little IDA slides, that's how I was able to actually find the same Xor key. They've been using the same Xor key over and over and over and over again for the encryption and decryption of all their modules. That said, we can use that same Xor key to write up a YARA rule. YARA will actually go through and scan, or if you have YARA set up, you can scan a binary at the memory level or at the hex. You can set up a hex search essentially through a binary, and if it sees that, then you can just say, wait, I know what that is. Here's an interesting trick I saw going through the FinFisher. It had a check to see if it was in a sandbox. Once again, I know it's kind of hard to read, so I'll just kind of give you a quick overview of what it does. In the code here, what it does to check to see if it's a sandbox is something I haven't actually seen before. It was like, wow, they do this? But in this case, what it does to check to see if it's in a sandbox is it uses the structured exception handling trick. How much time do I have, by the way? No. Oops. I thought that's what he did when he walked up here. All right. So the way it checks to see if it's in a sandbox is a trick I like to dub the structured exception handling trick. What it does is it modifies the contents of a function called KI user dispatcher. KI user dispatcher. Is that it? Yeah. KI user dispatcher. I'm trying to like half and half the notes here. I'm going off of memory. The KI user dispatcher function. So what it does is it overwrites a push and it overwrites this particular function with some assembly code. Push a certain address onto the stack and return. And what happens is it executes an invalid instruction, like a privileged instruction or something like that. And then it executes it several times. The sandbox says, oh, the program just crashed. It must be good. So it just moves on. But what it actually does is when you execute those bad instructions, Windows hits that function, sees the push, and returns, and jumps to the other code. It's like, I'd never seen that before. I thought that was really cool. So I thought I'd put it up in the talk. Rewt Kit, the Rewt Kit portion of FinFisher. FinFisher does drop a Rewt Kit. It's actually pretty good. Well, not that good if I saw it right, but the Rewt Kit does some things I'd never seen before because I don't normally run into Rewt Kits that much these days, but it does drop one. What it does is after all the sandbox checks and making my life miserable, that's how you probably read, it drops a Rewt Kit that modifies your master boot record. That's a bad thing. So what it does is it modifies your master boot record to hook the int13 interrupt. For those of you who probably don't have an Intel manual handy, that's all right. The int13 hook is responsible for disk reads. So anytime a disk read occurs, which is all the time on Windows if you've ever run anything like Procmon, anytime a disk read occurs, it kicks in. It's like that's its event handler. It says, all right, I should start doing something. So this is how it goes so low, it goes lower than the antivirus or any other antivirus I've ever known to actually init and start kicking off. I thought that was pretty interesting. Data theft. Like I said originally, it tries to steal everything it can, and it encrypts it too. The way it encrypts it is using AES 256-bit encryption, but the key is actually in the binary, which kind of makes it useless, right? Anyway, it stores it in the Win Directory installer folder, which is also the same place you'll see the driver file briefly if you were to run something like Procmon. How do we defend against FinSpy? Pre-op and post-op. Pre-op is a YARA rule, which I'll show in just a second. Post-mortem is any tool like root repeal, which unfortunately does not work on 64-bit Windows. I really wish it did, and I really wish someone would reach out and say, come on, man, can you please port it over? Give me the source code. I'll do it for you. GMER, another great utility. And presence of files in the installer folder. So I'm going to show you here. So it would look like C:" Windows installer. See, normally this folder is hidden. you wouldn't normally actually be able to see it because Windows likes to hide everything and it thinks we're too stupid, but it's there. What you'll see is a folder with a unique GUID like this, and inside that GUID, and it actually doesn't even bother checking or modifying the file access time. So if you look for something like recently date modified, you'll see a whole bunch of files inside with the files .dat extension and a bunch of DLLs that don't look like they fit. That's usually a good sign that you might possibly be infected. But the talk was on how would you defend against it. The number one way to defend against malware in today's age is not be stupid. Since it uses email communications, it requires you to actually open the actual executable to run it. Windows is actually kind of, I already said Windows sucks. Windows by default will not show the extensions of known file types. The way they trick our ass is they use the right to left control character. So the right to left control character is it's a stupid thing. It's a Unicode character extension, right? It's a Unicode character extension, and if you have something .jpeg.exe, it takes the exe and puts it at the front. So if it has a JPEG icon, and they do, and you see exe at the front, and you double click it, and it opens, it's just going to run. I try and explain this to other people. I tried explaining this before in the past to my superiors at various companies I've worked. Like, if it looks like a duck, it talks like a duck, you double click it, it opens a duck, people are going to assume it's a duck and nothing's wrong. But by default, like I said, Windows turns off show extensions for known file types, and that's another story. So post-mortem, pre-op, that's how you detect it. Here's a little tiny YARA rule. There are a lot of utilities out there that use YARA, FireEye, what's that one? McAfee has a tool. But for YARA rule, what we have here is our 4-byte Xor key. Since they're going to keep using the same Xor key, they probably won't after this talk and it goes viral, I hope. Then they'll probably change the Xor key. But for now, if you want to detect it, look for that byte sequence. Unique tricks. So the one trick right here, while I was going through it, actually threw me off for about 20 or 30 minutes. Well, actually, I lie. It threw me off for a day, and then I came back to it. All right, so what it does is it claims it calls create, when the app launches, it calls create window, what it actually calls create process. It threw me off. I was like, what the hell? I'd set my breakpoints, and it'd get to create window, and the app would just launch. I'm like, what the hell? And I'd start again. When I was going through it in IDA, I could actually see right here the virtual protect call. What it was actually doing was it was overwriting the address of create window and replacing it with create process. What the hell? They just did that to trick me, just me. Like, the whole world's against Joe, and just throw me off for a day. Screw you guys. Final thoughts. How much time do I have left? 2 minutes. All right, so that's good. Final thoughts. So this malware was actually really advanced. I spent more than the normal 1 or 2 hours I normally spend on malware. This time I actually spent about 3 weeks on it. Some really advanced stuff. That trick that threw me off for the day, the fact that it actually modifies your master boot record, encrypted communications, all that stuff. That's actually some strong stuff. But FinFisher is not foolproof. You'll be able to see it via conventional anti-Rewt Kit techniques. Now, if they had made actual use of modifying the boot sector to load some other driver, that would have thrown me off even longer. But they didn't. And the fact that they keep using the same Xor key over and over again means they're stupid. Or maybe they just didn't figure no one would be able to obtain this. So that said, I feel in the future we're going to see a lot more tools like this, a lot more malware like this, because malware is actually a very lucrative industry. Zero access. I read an article once that said zero access raked in several $100 million over the course of a year. That's a lot of money. When there's a lot of money, you're going to see some awesome stuff. The old days of sub 7 are over. It's no longer about just controlling someone's microphone or opening up your friend's CD-ROM drive just to screw with them really late at night. No, it's all about data theft. It's all about not just data theft, but just spying in general. It's spying on the populace. And there's a lot of money to be made on FinFisher's end. So they're going to keep on producing some of the more advanced stuff. Works Cited. So I was not the first person to go through this particular malware suite. At the time of writing, I was actually competing on Reddit with another guy named Code and Sec. I don't know his real name. I was just call him that. I looked him up, and all I get is Code and Sec. He released actually a pretty good article. If you visit this one right here, his analysis on the FinFisher malware dropper, it's actually really detailed. He goes into a lot of detail about the actual extraction and the actual Rewt Kit, and I recommend you reading that. But these two people right here beat us both in their original analysis of the FinFisher dropper back in 2012. Also, there was a Bloomberg article about what I was just talking about with FinFisher being sent to various journalists. And it didn't really strike up. It didn't really catch fire like you'd think it would. Like, what? Governments are spying on people? We already knew that. Questions? And my cool pick. Do I have time for questions? You.
I have one real fast. So you mentioned that there was a MDR modification to try to intercept M13.
Yes.
Do you know if that would have been successful if it was using a good partition table instead of an MDR?
I don't know.
Okay.
Way to stump me on the first question. Thank you. Redbeard, everyone. Anyone else? No? All right. Oh, and shameless self-promotion. Gotta have that. Shameless self-promotion, always. Visit my blog, give me hits, give me ad money. You know, that's pretty cool.